Relationships have their ups and downs. But what do you do when you start to see signs that your relationship might be unhealthy? How do you cope? How do you recognize those signs? And when should you leave? Today, we learn more about toxic relationships. Thanks for listening and subscribing to Learning More. It's Russ with you. And today we are talking about toxic relationships. I am joined by Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro. Marni, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Russ, thank you so much for having me on Learning More.
So, okay, you're an author. You've got your latest book, God Came to My Garage Sale, and you've got a couple of other books. You've got a series of books. Can you tell us a little about those?
Yeah, sure. I did write my first major writing endeavor was a spiritual fiction called God Came to My Garage Sale. But then I went on to write about domestic violence and narcissistic abuse and parental alienation. And then also through the writing, intergenerational family trauma became a topic to discuss as well. But the 3-book series that I have out right now, it's called True Deceit, False Love. And, it is very prominently endorsed by many influencers in the abuse recovery community. And they have found value in this series, which is awesome. Hopefully it will help, even if it just helps one person out there, that's good. It's been certainly very healing for me, but there's 3 different books in the series right now, and I'm working on a 4th.
If this is the topic of choice for your books, there's got to be a story behind this. Can you tell us a little about your experience with this?
Yeah, sure. I was just going along, living the American dream, raising my family in the Chicago suburbs. I was getting close to retiring from a 35-year career as a special ed high school teacher, 12 of those years as an adjunct professor at the university level. And so all was going okay. But, I knew that, my marriage was, there were some concerns about my relationship with my ex-husband. My values of honesty and goodness and love and working together was just very different than his values. And, it's very easy for many people, men and women, to just stay in relationships, just plug along because that's what we're familiar with. Right. And in my case, I was married for 27 years before I decided to make a change. But there was a defining moment when I really knew I needed to finally pay attention to the red flags and look out for myself. And actually, it wasn't until after filing for divorce that so much of my world came crashing down, where I had so many significant losses. And it's almost like, I didn't really realize that I was in the midst of domestic violence, domestic abuse, but I was for many years. But, hindsight is 20/20. And that's what happens to a lot of people is when they finally remove themselves from a situation, they can really look at it for what it really was. Kind of take off the rose-colored glasses, and you end up losing everything. In my case, my home, my money, my support system, friends, family, neighbors. I was fortunate; I didn't lose my job, and he tried, but I didn't lose my health. And but the devastating part was I lost 2 adult children to parental alienation, and that was just very, very shocking. That really.
What is parental alienation?
But, and it's funny, a lot of people don't know it by name, but they might know it because they're either experiencing it or they know someone else that has. But parental alienation is a term that is used usually in a divorce or separation situation where one parent is more the abuser and wants to get back at that other parent. In my case, I was threatened, don't you dare divorce me. If you divorce me, I'll take your house, your money, your children, and he did just that. And so, and a person who is engaged in parental alienation, they very subtly, it's not usually very overtly, but they get the children, whether they're young or whether they're adults, to align with them, and they kind of almost brainwash them with outlandish lies or half truths. It doesn't matter if your kids, like in my case, my kids were in their 20s and 30s, and they still, even though they had life experiences that would prove otherwise, they believed some false narratives. And so really it's a campaign of denigration that one parent does, a mother or a father, against the other parent to get back at them. They've already taken
Hmm.
everything that is important to them, and now they're going to take the children. And
Jeez.
because it's so unnatural for a dad or mom, to all of a sudden lose their loving relationship with their kids. So, it's meant to hurt the parent, which it does. It's extremely heart wrenching, and it takes a lot to understand and heal from this. I don't know if you ever heal from it, but the thing is, it's the children who really get
Yeah,
damaged by this.
that's where I was thinking too. I mean, the
Yeah.
kids that have to go through that. You're turning one parent against the other. It's
Right.
awful.
And then there's also, Russ, a phenomenon called independent thinker phenomenon, which is where the children believe it's their idea that they separated from that one parent. It's
Mm,
almost kind of like if you've heard the Stockholm syndrome scenario, where it was a
right.
bank robbery in Sweden, and the bank tellers actually aligned, and were sympathetic to the bad guys,
Right.
to the bank
Right.
robbers, and their plight. And so that's kind of what happens with children. Psychologically, there's a term called splitting, where in order to survive this horrendous situation, they just have to compartmentalize and kind of split in their personality. So
Mhm.
they align with the parent that doesn't give the unconditional love, that is actually very controlling and doesn't foster independence. And they could be fearful for them, but they turn the scenarios around. All those emotions are actually acted out towards the loving, empathetic parent who has always been there for them. And they know that their love is to the moon and back. And so in some ways we're the chosen ones, the targeted parents. But it's a devastating situation all around. It's something I've experienced, and you know millions and millions of people around the world have experienced this. If And I would encourage your listeners, if they really want to look into parental alienation more, just type that into a search engine and
Right.
see what comes up. You'll come up with a lot of books and podcasts and research.
Hmm. That's one of the beautiful things about today. There are podcasts out there. There's YouTube videos out there. There's all of this information at your fingertips around trauma. There's so many like books out there where you could learn more, and there's entire podcasts dedicated to it. I mean, on this podcast, we've covered intergenerational trauma, narcissism. I've
Yeah.
covered divorce, and hopefully, it's impacting at least somebody out there. And so I appreciate you being able to tell your story. And I'm thinking about people that are perhaps in this. You went 27 years and you said like the red flags were easier to see once you were out of it. What were some of those red flags in that relationship that perhaps people should be looking out for?
Well, there's many, and it can vary, of course, with people. And then the people who are abusing, that are not very genuine people or honest people, they are also on a spectrum. So they can be severe or they can be just mild in their behaviors and actions. But some of the red flags are that you are gaslit. So,
Mm.
gaslighting is where you're made to believe that you heard something wrong, you didn't see what you saw, you question your own reality about what happened, because the abuser very purposely instills doubt in your abilities. They will actually even gaslight you. Another way they'll do that is they'll question your taste in clothes or food or friends or music, or just anything that is part of who you are, that you feel good about. They want to knock it down, but they do
Mm.
it in such a subtle way that um, and oftentimes it's under the cloak of care, like, oh, I really am concerned for you. I just don't think you should really hang out with this person because, they are not so good, when really they could be your best friend. It could be great, but they just want to isolate you. So gaslighting is one. Isolation is another red flag, where you slowly realize that your support system is not as big as it used to be. So at one point you could go to family members or friends and have their support, or neighbors, but then you slowly find that are isolated from these
Hmm.
people, and so you don't have the support system. You're kind of left on your own. Another thing would be, infidelities. Most people that are abusers, are not honest people, and they kind of have they call it a harem closet, or a harem garage, where they've lined up their old boyfriends or girlfriends or relationships, to keep, in the back burner, so that when something kind of goes south, they can go back to these people. Lots of
Hmm.
times, after a divorce situation, you will see the one kind of more abusive partner go right back to their high school girlfriend or boyfriend, or right back to a work relationship, or they'll move on so fast. When you're left like, wow, how did that happen? I thought we made a vow to be together forever, and so another red flag is infidelities. If you find that your partner is working late all the time, and they're gone all the time, when maybe their job doesn't even require it. They might even go on business trips, out of town. They get very nervous around holidays. They kind of ruin holidays for you, in many ways. Joyful celebrations, whether it's birthdays or, Christmas or things like that. You almost end up dreading those, because they make it such a negative, painful, experience, because you have certain expectations that you'll be together and enjoy things as a family, but they have other things in mind.
Hmm.
Another thing is to finances. People that are abusers are very money obsessed, and I would say a majority of them are very fiscally irresponsible. They don't pay their bills, or they get other people to pay their bills, or they are constantly juggling money from one account to another, whether it's very large sums or whether it's small sums. But it just, the whole, if you find that you've there's just a lot of issues around money, that's something to kind of sit back and pay attention to. And I am definitely guilty of being, blindly handing over a paycheck for decades, and just assuming that my partner had our family's interests in mind. But
Right.
no, these people could have addictions that they are, whether it's pornography or gambling or substance abuse. They lots of them have addictions. They can even be addicted to their phone. If you see them, having secret passcodes and not letting you see a text or something, or if they go out to the mail or get a package and immediately put it away, it's just something to start paying attention to. But so many of us ignore all of these things. But those
Right.
are some of the red flags to kind of pay attention to. So it would be like gaslighting, isolation, money manipulation, infidelities, and everything that goes along with that, addictions, and just you know, sit back and kind of look and say, are these people honest? Are they being
So,
honest?
I mean, the hard thing would be, and I think, there's uh, thinking about different personality types, right? Like one type, let's say, would want to just care for that person and kind of go in deeper to like take that kind of role of like, I really like, there's more and more problems here. I need to step in. I need to help even more and more and more. And it's almost like that's the type of person that's getting taken advantage of in these situations. Like, what do you do if you're that person where you're just being taken advantage of, and you don't even realize it, just because it's your personality type, it's how you are.
Right. And actually, so many victims are chosen because of that personality type, because they are loving, they are empathetic, they are forgiving. They're
Hmm.
people that will stick it out through thick or thin. And these abusers know that. I guess when you eventually realize, hey, you're not dealing with someone who has the same values, you really need to sit back and pay a little bit more attention to the dynamics of your relationship. Some relationships, and people are willing to work on it and kind of work together, but a whole great number of them are not. Once you realize someone has some of these narcissistic, borderline, sociopath, psychopath personality traits, of course they're never diagnosed. I mean, they don't seek a
Yeah.
diagnosis, and they don't think
Right.
anything's wrong with them. They're the kind of people that point the fingers at other people. I think that when that it's not good to point your finger at the other person, because you're pointing one finger at them and there's three fingers pointing back at you. So you need to kind of look at yourself and not necessarily change who you are, your core values. I believe I'm still the same person I always was, except for being a little bit more discerning about who I let in my life now and what relationships I want to continue with.
Hmm.
This is for many people, the last couple years, and especially now, it's a time where people are really evaluating and reevaluating their relationships with people. Our world
Yeah.
has kind of been turned upside down, and we're all
Hmm.
having to adjust to so many different changes. And many of us are finding, hey, some of these friendships that we had are not necessarily healthy, or they could be one sided, or that they are not positive. But yet there's some other people that you could gravitate with, that you are more, like minded with. So
Right.
I think that some of it is, stay true to your values, but be a little bit more discerning, but also kind of look within your own life. Go back to your own childhood experiences with your own family unit and see, gosh, where there's some dysfunction there too. What makes, the empathetic person such an overgiver, or so accepting that they will continue to take it and take it and take it without breaking. So I think that you have to do some of the inner work. But the biggest advice that I would give is research, 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 because knowledge is power. Like you
Hmm.
said, in this day and age, we can just put in a topic in a search engine and get
Whatever you want to learn about, it's there.
almost anything. And you
Yeah.
have to do a little bit of your own homework as far as,
Hmm.
finding who you resonate with as far as their message and that type of thing. But there's lots of information out there. And I think people that have gone through this and have gotten through maybe the worst of it, a lot of people turn their experiences around to help inspire others who might be going through these hard things. So, like, for example, in my case, I want to live a happy, peaceful life. Now, I did move from the Chicago area to the Caribbean, partly to get away from the abuser, but partly just to live the second half of my life where I would like to, and just,
Hmm.
fulfill some of my own dreams and surround myself with goodness and nature and that type of thing. But
A
I
lot
have
less
found
snow as well.
writing has been extremely helpful. So I put out, like you said, that 3-book series, True Deceit, False Love, that provides actual tangible tools for others that are going through this. So people that find themselves coming out the other end of all of this turn their experiences around. Many of them are compelled to talk about it, never smearing the people, or slandering anyone, but just sharing their truthful experiences to help aid another person who might be
Right.
going through this.
Right. Well, you mentioned, the alienation earlier. Like they may not have other people that they can turn to in, their circle that they can talk to about this because they've, been pulled away from them. Is
And
that
there's a
enough?
lot of shame
Sorry.
involved too.
Right.
And there's a lot of misconceptions. There are people that will say, how could your 20-year-old child, cut, just estrange from you? You must have done something
Hmm.
terrible to make them stop communicating with you. And actually, that statement couldn't be further from the truth, because that's not what happens with alienation. Although the young and adult children believe that, they start to believe that own narrative, that oh, that parent was so bad, even though they don't really have the facts to back up, and even if you have scrapbooks with photos and family videos to show, hey, wait a minute, it was not so bad, this is what you're saying didn't actually happen. It's until they actually get to a certain point in their life where they might experience their own trauma. Sometimes, unfortunately, their light bulb doesn't go on until they're older and have families of their own, or uh, realize that they've been in a relationship with a friend or a partner that
Right.
has different values. So light bulbs don't go on necessarily in a timely manner. In fact, I'm 60 years old, and I love both of my parents. My mom passed away many years ago, but my light bulb kind of went on about their dynamics and how
Mm,
unhealthy that was. And, I was a product of divorce, and, I am starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And unfortunately, my mom, whose story is very similar to mine, did not have search engines to type in, you
right.
know, what's happening here, and there wasn't as much research or open dialogue. And in fact, in her generation, or even the generation before, the way to handle it is silence. Don't talk about it,
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah, and it'll go away, but we just don't acknowledge the bad things. Just put on that happy face.
Hmm. Yeah, it's that cycle that you're talking about. It seems like it's
Right.
been passed to your kids
Yeah.
by your ex,
Right.
and
Right.
that's awful.
It's the dynamics of the whole thing. So, I don't really, even though, like with parental alienation, you really can place blame on one person. Not that I'm out to place blame on anyone, but there's usually just one. It's not necessarily, oh, it takes two to tango. That's not the case when it comes to
Yeah.
parental alienation. It is real child abuse, and it is really done by one malevolent dad or mom. And then, of course, extended family members can get involved in
Right.
this, and grandparents can be
Mm,
alienated as well. Usually when a kid, when a young or an adult child estranges from the one loving parent that now they believe they should fear and that they hate, they've been taught to hate, they cut off the relationship also with that entire side of the family. So that is very, very common. So even though they might have been close with cousins, aunties, uncles, grandparents, those relationships are ended as well. They're
right.
cut off at the same time.
If this person is alienating and convincing all of these other people, in many ways, brainwashing the kids, brainwashing family members, and alienating the other person, the victim, from everyone else, what does that do in court when you're going through the divorce? Doesn't that make it where it's really tough to make the case as the victim on this? You would think it would be difficult.
I believe it's very difficult, and how nice you haven't had experience with it. And actually, I haven't had experience with parental alienation in court, because when I chose to divorce my abuser, my children were older.
Okay.
So I didn't have
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
I personally didn't have to deal with custody issues.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
unfortunately, so many courts, lawyers and guardian ad litems and therapists, people that in judges, that they don't have a clue about narcissism or parental alienation. And because the abuser is so calm, cool, and collected in court, in fact, they love court. Court is their
that's
playground.
right.
They love that chaos and that drama and that interaction. And they love the fact that they are causing their ex partner to be financially destroyed as well as
Hmm.
emotionally destroyed.
Yeah.
So the court situation does not always work out. There are many wonderful fathers that have lost all custody of their beautiful children because their ex-wife made up false allegations, like even
Mhm.
saying sexual abuse or something that, of course, this father never would have engaged in, but yet he a judge believed him, and
Right.
they award full custody to the alienator, which is the absolute worst thing that you can do. And there's only a few programs out there for reunification of kids that have been younger kids that have been alienated. And I don't know the data on that or whether it's successful, but it's got to be awful to be engaged in court. Abusers,
Yeah.
they love the court drama. In fact, I filed for divorce. I'll just share something personal here. I filed for divorce in 2013. So it's almost a decade later, and my ex-husband is still taking me to court
Oh my
because
God.
they just want to destroy you financially. It doesn't matter whether they
Jeez.
lie on petitions. They get lawyers to believe this, and they just love the whole drama of it all. Now, you, of course, you have to respond because
It,
even if
it
it's all
yeah.
lies, there's a petition against you. But they want you in this
Mm,
defensive mode, and they want to steal your happiness and your joy and your time and definitely your money. And
right.
so, I try to compartmentalize that because I'm living a beautiful life. And, even though right now, currently, my life is without my children, I still am a mom. I'm still role modeling that when you're faced with challenges, there are different ways you can respond. I just choose to respond with love, honesty, and goodness. And, at some point, truth has to prevail at some point. Hopefully,
Right.
it's in this lifetime.
It's weird to say this, but it's an inspirational story, and it's not the lead up to things, but it's the way that you've handled it and the things that you've done that's so inspiring. I mean, we're on camera right now, so I can see you. I mean, you've got a
Mhm.
beautiful backdrop. It's nice and sunny. You're in the Caribbean, as you said. I mean,
Yeah,
like, that's beautiful. You're writing these books, you're doing something you love, and you're smiling and you're happy and you want to help others. I mean, I
right.
think that part of this is so inspirational. How did you do that? How did you take this awful situation that you were in and all these things that happened to you and turn it into inspiration?
Well, I've always approached challenges with goodness and love and honesty and looking at it. And I did have kind of a spiritual awakening as a result, which prompted me to write the spiritual fiction God Came to My Garage Sale. So I expanded my belief system, and I really believe we're here on earth to learn lessons, and we really can't appreciate the positive and the light and the goodness without experiencing the dark and seeing the difference between the two. And so many of us have experienced that in the last couple of years, whatever every people's, whether their work, family, health situation,
Hmm.
there's been a lot of challenges. But how we choose to respond, I think, is very, very important. And I think that what you put out there in the universe is what you get back. So if I was someone who was negative and angry and revengeful, first of all, I don't think I'd have a very enjoyable life, but I would be putting all that darkness out there in the world, and that would color what my experiences are. I wouldn't be able to fully enjoy life and be happy. So I just believe that, you know, we can all be faced with challenges. And we're talking about domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, parental alienation here, toxic relationships. But there are so many other kinds of things that are negative that people are going through. But how you choose to handle them makes a difference. And I found also pursuing my passions, trying to get back to me a little bit, like what did I like to do before I had all my
Right.
interests and stuff knocked down? How do I want to enjoy my time? And definitely for me, writing was very, very healing. Even though I kind of, it's not that I see an end to the writing, but now that I've got this true deceit, false love book series out, and people have been interested, like you and others that are having me on podcasts to talk about these very important issues. I'm happy to still do that, but at some point surviving this experience is hopefully coming not to an end but to another chapter where
Hmm.
I can spend less time kind of sorting it all out and more time living. But I think that
Right.
our inner core values are very important. And I think that also following your gut intuition, I ignored my gut intuition for so many years that said, hey, get out of this situation, or this best friend is really not a best friend. She's just, you know, power hungry or controlling or whatever. Actually, you find that some people that you thought were very close to you actually would betray you with no problem. And so you have to come to terms and say, why did I allow that to happen? And hey, I'm not going to let that happen again. So let me take care of myself. And I think also just physically taking care of yourself is important.
Hmm.
People that have been abused find themselves that, with poor health, or that they just really didn't do things to encourage healthy living when it comes to
Yeah.
eating and sleeping and exercising and how they want to spend their time. So,
So in this situation, it seems like trust was a big thing. Trust with other people, trust in relationships.
sure.
How how is that now for you? I mean, is it more difficult for you to have relationships, even to like make friends? Is it harder now?
It's not hard to make friends and to have relationships and be friendly with others, but it is a little different for me now as far as letting them into my world, into my personal circle. So, yes, I'm much more discerning now. So, yes, it has impacted trust. And I have found that a lot of people who have never experienced parental alienation or domestic abuse don't get it. And it's not that you can't have a relationship with them, but you have deeper relationships with others that have gone through this and do understand it. There's a more of a connection with people, and I've been thrilled to make some amazing connections. And you could go on my website and look at my books, at all the people that have endorsed my books, and many of them have become good friends now, that
Nice.
because we have so
You
many
have
values in common. But I was
right.
also very lucky that after I divorced, I became closer with a very good friend of mine. And he and I just connected on so many levels, not only spiritually, but just also understanding family dynamics and understanding interactions with others. And then, so I have a life partner now that we decided together to move to the Caribbean. So I'm extremely fortunate to
Nice.
be spending my days with someone I trust, I have fun with, who's has the same kind of values. And honesty is the biggest value that I have, I believe, and love to me is the biggest vibration. So I'm very fortunate that, not only do I have, even though I have a smaller circle of friends, they're more in tune with who I am, and the it's more of a reciprocal friendship where it's
Hmm.
not just one-sided. And then I also
Right.
have my life partner to enjoy my days with.
Well, Marnie, it's always great to do an interview like this where I walk away and I feel like after talking to you, I feel like I'm going to have a great day.
Yeah, yeah.
I really do, appreciate you telling your story. I strongly suggest if you're listening to this and you want to further learn more about it, then you're going to want to check out the books and you're going to want to head over to your website. Can you tell us your website and also just remind us about the books a little bit?
Yeah, sure, sure. So my website is the title of my spiritual fiction, godcametomygaragesale.com. And I actually have, like, I think 11 books under my belt. So
Oh,
a
wow.
number of the books I've been involved in are anthology books, where I contribute a chapter or an essay.
That's awesome. Well, Marnie, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your story and for helping us learn more about toxic relationships.
Well, thank you so much. It's just been an honor to be here.
And thank you for listening and subscribing to Learning More. We encourage you and thank you for rating this podcast and sharing it with your friends. As with any podcast that gives medical or legal opinion, the information is not meant to substitute professional advice, and we encourage you to consult a professional to discuss your exact needs. I also invite you to join me next week where we are going to learn more about quitting. Okay, so this one is like perfect for the topics that we've had over the last couple of weeks. We talked about career burnout, right? Like, when do you leave that job? How do you deal with those emotions and feelings around leaving that job? And then today, we talked about toxic relationships. How do you know when to leave? How can you feel good about leaving and know that something positive is on the other side of that? We're going to talk about that next week. It's a fantastic conversation. I can't wait to share that one with you. If you'd like to learn more about something specific, hey, you know what? This show can be yours, essentially. Just let us know what you would love to learn more about, and it can become an entire episode. You can do so by heading over to learningmorepodcast.com. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. I'm Russ, and I look forward to learning more with you next time.